This morning, the Texas House comes back to life. State Rep Jasmine Crockett from Dallas on her disappointment with fellow Democrats, Governor Abbott's COVID diagnosis, and the Democrat she wants to see run for governor. Congressman Van Taylor, a Marine Corps veteran, explains the one mistake that he believes President Biden made, which helped unravel Afghanistan. Arlington is under new leadership and is preparing to unveil a massive addition to its entertainment district. The new mayor, Jim Ross, joins us. And Texas schools and counties finding new ways around the governor on masking and vaccines. We'll talk about what this fall could look like.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to our viewers across the state. Let's get things started this morning with some of the Texas political headlines that you might have missed. Governor Abbott faces new backlash for his refusal to let school districts require masks. 14 children with disabilities sued the governor in federal court. These children have cerebral palsy and asthma, among other things, and argue that Abbott's order violates the Americans with Disabilities Act because it prevents a safe return to school. In Collin County at McKinney ISD, the school district there decided that its youth in government courses could no longer be an elective on some campuses, but must be after-school extracurricular activities across the board. The reason why is the state's new ban on critical race theory that Republicans passed. McKinney ISD told us the new law is vague and suggests that it did not want to risk violating that statute. And you might have seen this one coming. The state is preparing to borrow billions of dollars in response to the deadly winter storm back in February. The state government, all that money is not to improve the state's electricity grid. The Austin American-Statesman says it's to help natural gas and electricity companies regain some of their losses. But the plan is to then recoup that cash from ratepayers, adding a little extra to your bill each month. But let's begin in Austin and the disappointment from many Texas Democrats. They're upset at 3 of their colleagues from Houston. 3 Democrats that decided to return to the Capitol a few days ago and restore quorum in the State House after a 38-day walkout. It had to happen sometime, but their return caught many of their Democratic colleagues by surprise, including State Rep Jasmine Crockett from Dallas.
To say that I'm disappointed would be putting it lightly. To say that I am truly sorry to all Texans, especially so many of my constituents, as well as so many just other people in this country that were believing in us. The fact that literally they folded and we're right there, we're almost there. We're not there yet, but we know that there's federal legislation that they're working on. They're working right now. They're going to take a vote next week. There was no reason to go and do this to the children in the state of Texas, to their parents.
So a day or so before that story broke, we did set up an interview with Representative Crockett to talk about a number of things. She is one of the most outspoken new Democrats in the legislature. And we talked to her about Governor Abbott's COVID diagnosis and the Democratic candidate that she wants to see run for governor. Crockett represents District 100. That's a wide swath of southern Dallas County. Representative Crockett, last month we saw some Texas House Democrats get COVID when they were in D.C. Republicans, of course, criticized them for not wearing masks. And now here we are with Governor Abbott testing positive for COVID. He, too, in many situations we have seen, was not wearing masks. What's your reaction?
I think that it's the hypocrisy that we see in the Texas ledge. Sadly enough, it's playing out on national display. At the time that my colleagues did contract COVID-19, they were following CDC guidelines, which said that persons that are vaccinated could be around one another without masks. That was before the rise of Delta. Once my colleagues actually contracted COVID, we decided to shift gears completely, and we decided to start masking up and testing every single day, even though at that point, that wasn't the recommendation of CDC. They then started to realize that there were these breakthrough cases, and I'm thinking, duh, we're seeing it play out because they're all vaccinated. And so there's new guidance. So once the new guidance came out, I don't understand why anyone would avoid that, but that's what they're doing on the House floor. That's why we've seen a number of Republicans that have actually tested positive for COVID-19 on the House floor. They're still refusing to wear masks. So not only is there so much legislation that's really bad for our constituency on the House floor waiting for us, seemingly there's COVID on the floor waiting for us. And so Governor Abbott and our other Republican colleagues that refuse to just follow the experts and guidance and science, I think that they're doing more harm than good, not only to their constituency that trusts them and believes in what they say, but they're obviously doing harm to themselves as well as potentially to their families.
Here's the last question for you. At least 3 Republicans, as we've reported, are running against Governor Abbott. But here we are closing in on Labor Day. Not a single Democrat has announced a run yet. 2 questions. Why not? And who would you like to see run?
Ooh, that's a good one. You know what? I'm a anybody but Abbott girl right now. So I don't care if it's Daffy Duck. But no, I think that we are seeing some of the terrible policies coming out of our governor because he does have a mounting Republican primary. I personally think that we're running short on time. And I think that there's only one person who actually could get up and get a statewide campaign going. You mentioned the timeline, and for the viewers, what that means is that it's almost impossible to get your name ID as well as your machine going in the entire state to actually be able to mount a challenge. I think there's only one person that can mount a challenge, and I think that's Beto O'Rourke.
All right, Representative Crockett, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Over the last few days, we have watched school districts and counties find workarounds to the governor's orders. Paris ISD, for example, northeast of Dallas, added face masks to its dress code this fall. Harris County is paying people $100 to get vaccinated, and this fall, concerts and festivals are likely to be a little different as well. So let's start there with Ross Ramsey this morning, the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune. Ross, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well. You know, there's a lot to be happening here. What do you expect? How do you expect the governor to react politically, if at all?
Well, he's set a pretty hard line here and said, you can't mandate masks and you can't have a lot of these kinds of rules that people are nevertheless putting in place. Schools seem to be at the vanguard of this because you can't inoculate children. You can't vaccinate, I should say, children under the age of 12. That's about 54% of the kids in public schools. They're required to be in their seats. You can't vaccinate them. And now you can't tell them to wear masks. And a lot of parents are pushing back. And I think that's where the political tension in most of this is going to show up. And that remains fluid, too. Let's talk about, follow what we talked to State Rep Jasmine Crockett about, the quorum back in the State House, the Texas House now. How much do you really expect to get done over the next 14 days, the remaining 14 days of this second special legislative session? It depends on whether they can hold the quorum or not. You have to have, there are 2 empty seats in the Texas House. There are 150 seats total. You have to have 99 people in the room to do business. They apparently had it for a minute, or said they did, and you've got to hold that. So once they come in the room, they've got to keep 99 people in the room where someone can basically call foul on it. I think it's going to be touch and go for a few days, but it looks like the Democrats are slowly trickling back in. Yeah, it could be tight. Ross, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Coming up, as Afghanistan unravels, Congressman Van Taylor, a Marine Corps veteran, explains the one mistake he believes President Biden is making. And Arlington preparing to unveil a massive addition to its entertainment district. The new mayor, Jim Ross, joins us in just a moment. For days now, we have watched the heartbreaking humanitarian crisis unfold in Afghanistan. That country falling back into the hands of the Taliban. President Trump negotiated that transition to the Taliban, but our next guest says it was President Biden who's responsible for one big mistake in all of this. Congressman Van Taylor is a veteran of the Marine Corps who served in Iraq as a captain. He's a Republican who represents Collin County in North Texas. Congressman, it's good to see you again. Let's start off with Afghanistan, obviously. You said the other day in a statement that the disaster in Afghanistan and ensuing insecurity lay squarely on Biden's reckless decisions. Just looking at history here, President Trump obviously is the one that signed the treaty with the Taliban, setting the end of the war effectively. What I haven't heard in the past few days is anyone saying how they would have done this withdrawal any differently.
The planning was atrocious, just terrible. Leaving Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night, not even telling the Afghans that we were leaving. Now we need Bagram Air Force Base in the mess that we're in right now. We have more U.S. troops on the ground today in Afghanistan than we did when we tried to pull out, which tells you how badly this has gone. Sadly, this is the worst foreign policy disaster our country has ever faced. This is worse than the Bay of Pigs. It's worse than Saigon. The responsibility for this lays squarely with President Biden, because all he had to do was nothing. If President Biden had done nothing, not a thing, the Taliban, a terrorist group, would not control Afghanistan, and the region would not be totally destabilized by having a complete power vacuum. The mistake that President Biden has made is this assumption that if America withdraws, no one's going to fill the vacuum. And it was very clear to anybody that looked at it that when America withdrew, the vacuum that we filled would be filled by the Taliban.
Are you advocating, though, for the war to continue, or at least a large military presence to remain?
Well, what's so disastrous about this, Jason, is that you cannot repair the pieces that have been rent asunder here. The disaster that's been created, and that's why it's such a big disaster, is there's not an easy answer at this point. The best we can do is make sure we get every American home. The administration continues to quibble over whether or not they will do that. We need to get every American and every ally out of Afghanistan. And that doesn't mean just if they get to the airport, they get out, because right now, my understanding from talking to Afghans who are living in my district is the Taliban is surrounding the airport. They're blocking Americans from getting to the airport. They're blocking Afghan allies from getting to the airport. And so we have got to take a proactive stance on this and say, we're getting everybody home and we're staying until everybody comes home. As a Marine, I live the creed, leave no man behind. We're not leaving anybody behind.
And as the co-chair of the four-country caucus in Congress, which we have talked about on this program, a group of 25 veterans, Democrat and Republican, you all sent a letter to President Biden on Friday asking him that specifically.
Yes.
Should the U.S. send more troops in, though, in order to get these people out?
We need to put whatever is necessary on the ground to make sure every American and every American ally is safely, gotten out of Afghanistan.
Congressman, as a veteran as well and a member of Congress, I'm curious, at the end of the day, what did the 20-year war in Afghanistan really accomplish for the United States?
Well, we stopped terrorists from being able to train and conduct attacks around the world and against the United States for 20 years. And that was the object. That was the goal. That's what we were that was the most important objective. And that's now gone. Afghanistan is back in business. If you're the Taliban, if you're ISIS, if you're a new terrorist group, you now have a great place to go. And the Taliban will bring you in, and they will help you set up your training camps, and they will conduct terrorist operations against the United States and the rest of the world.
Congressman Taylor, thank you for your service, and we appreciate your time this morning.
Great to be with you.
The city of Arlington is under new leadership. It is home to the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Rangers, and we have learned it is very close to unveiling a massive addition to its entertainment district there. This morning, the new mayor joins us, Jim Ross, a retired police officer turned attorney, now with a top job at City Hall. Mayor Ross, congratulations. We haven't talked to you since your election, so congratulations on that. I want to ask about Arlington seeing the explosive growth over the last decade or so, new stadiums, new entertainment district. Where do you see your term, your potentially first term, maybe more terms than that, but where do you see that? Do you expect to add to the growth or sustain it?
Well, I ran because I wanted to make sure that somebody was going to be in office that can continue the momentum. So I want to add to the growth, but not just the growth in the entertainment district or the growth in population, but I want to add to the growth of solid jobs in Arlington. That's one of the things that we really, truly need here to sort of flip the formula on where our tax money is coming from to the job growth and not so much our residential property taxes. And I want to get that the increase in jobs here as much as we possibly can.
You signed on to a letter supporting the bipartisan infrastructure bill that's already passed the U.S. Senate and still waiting to go into the House. If and when that is passed, what specific projects would Arlington want to get money for?
Well, there's a ton of projects that Arlington needs to get money for. But the bottom line is we need to make sure that the local communities are able to use the monies that they get to benefit what's important to them. Here in Arlington, the infrastructure, taking care of our streets, taking care of our first responders, taking care of our transportation issues are critically important to us.
There's talk of a second hotel in the entertainment district. Your predecessor, Jeff Williams, told us about that before he left office, and also residential units going in there. What's the timeline on that? Is that still going to come to fruition?
Yeah, we expect a news release any day now with the Tisch Group doing the new Lowe's Hotel here just across from Live by Lowe's, 880 rooms in a brand new convention center here in Arlington. Just going to be an incredible facility. There'll be a groundbreaking ceremony any day now. I'm guessing within the next 30 to 45 days to do a groundbreaking ceremony over there. That's going to be phenomenal. That's going to bring in almost 900 more luxury hotel rooms right there in the heart of the entertainment district. And with that development is going to come a number of multifamily apartments and condominiums just to the north of there and sort of catty-corner to where the the Medal of Honor Museum is going to be.
It is exciting to think about. Mayor, we appreciate your time. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Did you hear what Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said about blacks and COVID? We'll begin there next on Reporters Roundtable. Let's start Reporters Roundtable now with something that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said on Fox News the other day about blacks and COVID. Hear for yourself.
Democrats like to blame Republicans on that. Well, the biggest group in most states are African Americans who have not been vaccinated. And the last time I checked, over 90% of them vote for Democrats in their major cities and major counties.
You heard him right there, so let's get to the facts with our Reporters Roundtable. Ross Ramsey is here from the Texas Tribune. Ross, we'll start with you. And what are your thoughts on this?
Well, the fact is that only about 15% of the unvaccinated people in Texas who are eligible for vaccinations are black. So, far and away, more of them are white and more of them are Hispanic than are black. It's just an unfortunate error on the Lieutenant Governor's part. He seems to be conflating blacks' support for Democrats with Democrats' attacks on Republicans for low vaccination rates and on the government in particular for, its response to COVID. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and Abby, also from the Texas Tribune, the Washington, D.C. bureau chief for the Trib, like Ross said, it just had us scratching our heads. So what? I mean, that's what we're thinking after we had to rewind it and play it again.
Well, I think with Texas statewide officials, we've seen over the last year and a half, Greg Abbott, Ted Cruz, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick go on Fox News and make these kinds of comments. They get national attention. They're referenced months later, and it's always on Fox News, which I think is obvious but indicative that they've got their eye on conservatives, speaking to conservatives in their primaries as we're going into an election year next year rather than the general elections.
Of course, yeah, Bernadine, you got to keep that in mind. Everyone's running for office again in this state. What's your reaction to what the Lieutenant Governor said?
But at first, when I heard it, I thought, here we go again, because I believe it is an extension of the Republican strategy. Governor Abbott is not winning the war on mask mandates. So what they do, they go in and they use racial issues, or they cause racial upheaval. Because that's nothing but a racist dog whistle to tell his base, say, okay, hey, the numbers are going up, COVID is surging, but it's the blacks. The blacks are the ones who are causing this. And then also when he mentioned personal responsibility, he wants to imply that we don't have personal responsibility. It is a winning strategy for some Republicans. And that's all it is. They use racial dog whistles. They play the racial cards, and they play up to their base so that their base can come out and their base can feel better about their failing policies.
Let's switch off to the other big story going on this coming week, too. Abby, we'll start with you on this one since it involves D.C. and Congress. Congress will take up two big issues, voting rights and infrastructure this week. What are you expecting to see?
Well, first of all, this is the middle of August recess. This is when all of Washington leaves town and gets out of the heat. And for Congress to come back early, they usually never return until after Labor Day. For Nancy Pelosi to call the House back indicates how important these issues are. It is going to be a fascinating week. We're going to have the voting rights. We're going to have the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which will deal with redistricting. And Democrats are in a race against the clock. This specific bill deals with how lines are drawn. And we are going to be seeing the Texas legislature begin to redistrict like they do every 10 years. And so it's a race against the clock.
And Bernadine, this is something that the Texas Democrats who fled to D.C. last month, this is what they had wanted. This seems like they're getting what they wanted, providing it could actually pass the Senate.
Absolutely. And we could give the Texas Democrats credit for the fact that Congress is taking up that voting rights bill. But as Abby said, they're racing against the clock. And then I cannot see the Republicans just letting this get through because it's all about power, census, redistricting. So there's going to be a fight.
And Ross, final word on this. I mean, at the end of the day, how likely is passage of this? Because in the Senate, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin from West Virginia, Sinema, of course, from Arizona, both had been saying, listen, we're not going to support this. So it'd be razor thin, even with them, right?
Even with them, I think that's right. I think Abby would probably be better on the odds here. But, it's important to the Texas Democrats because it would give them legal grounds to fight the voting bill that they're fighting in the legislature, assuming that it passes. And as Abby pointed out, this is going to be a big piece of the coming redistricting fight, which is the special session we're going to have if we ever get out of this one.
That's it. Good deal, guys. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics. Hope to see you then.